What games would I grab when disaster strikes? Hey, what's up, Brew Crew? Welcome back to Beer City Board Games. I'm Clay, and on this Sixer, I want to talk about the 6 games that I would save if something terrible happened and I had to choose which games to grab. Before I start, I want to give some love to Ben Maddox, who does the phenomenal podcast 5 Games for Doomsday, which put this idea in my head. If you're not already familiar with 5G 4D, I highly recommend checking it out. Ben is a fantastic interviewer and an entertaining podcaster, and he invites all the big names from the tabletop gaming world to come on his podcast, talk a little bit about themselves, but the underlying premise is that they must choose the 5 games that they would take with them if they had to flee some sort of apocalyptic event. I've listened to many episodes of his podcast and just recently decided that I wanted to attempt this exercise for myself. As much as I'd love to do it on the real thing, let's face it, that'd be a pretty boring interview. But I figured this would be a fun topic for a Sixer episode. So again, thanks to Ben Maddox for the idea, and definitely go check out that podcast if you haven't already. So first off, let me tell you a little bit about the criteria that I used when making the list. I wanted to make sure that I had at least most of my favorite gaming genres, which is tricky because I have a pretty broad taste when it comes to board games. What that means is that this won't just be my top 6 games of all time. For one, you can already go see that over on my Top 100 series, but also there are a lot of games at the top of my list that are fairly similar as far as their feel. So taking my top 6 games of all time wouldn't give me the diversity that I would want if I could only have 6 games. So this will be an assortment of games, which I love for a bunch of different reasons. Also, I had a bit of a tough time figuring out how I wanted to order this list, and to be honest, I'm not sure I came up with a really great way. I guess I would describe it as being in order of how disappointed I would be to lose the game from least disappointed to most disappointed. Okay, with all of that taken care of, let's get started.
6.
Number 6 would have to be Time's Up or Time's Up Title Recall, which is the version that I own. If I need to rebuild my collection from just 6 games, I would definitely want some sort of party game that could play a lot of people. The weird thing is, though, this really should be a game that I hate. I grew up playing charades and Pictionary and Taboo, and for someone with social anxiety and panic disorder, getting up in front of a group of people and trying to give clues or act things out while you have people shouting at you is basically what I assume hell is like. And Time's Up is very similar to those types of games. It's almost like an evolution from Taboo to charades, where you start off by giving verbal clues and gestures, and then one-word clues, and finally just gestures, trying to get your team to guess the words on your cards. You go through the same set of cards each round, though, so you can set yourselves up for later rounds by associating a particular gesture with a specific clue. The result of which is almost always hilarious. This is a game that I should hate, but I can't. I've had so much fun playing this game around the gaming table, around the campfire, just with a big group of friends, and everyone is laughing. It's especially hilarious when someone doesn't know the clue on the card, which has happened to me more than a handful of times. So that's my number 6, Time's Up.
5.
Number 5 is the only one that might be considered a bit of a cheat, so that'll be fun to hear about in the comments. I like co-ops. Jen and I got our start and really fell in love with gaming, playing games like Pandemic and Arkham Horror 2nd Edition. So I knew that I wanted to include a co-op game, but I was having trouble picking one out that would hold up to many plays. And then it hit me. Viticulture World. Not only would I get the co-op experience that I want, but I would also then have Viticulture to play as well, which is a game that I love to begin with. If you haven't played Viticulture, it's a worker placement game where players take on the roles of vineyard owners, trying to gain reputation by creating and selling the best wine. The Viticulture World expansion turns the game into a cooperative experience where all players are trying to reach a certain reputation point by the end of, I believe it's 6 turns. Now, I've only played this once, but the game we played felt plenty challenging. But on top of that, the game plays slightly differently depending on the global wine region that you set up at the beginning of the game. So I feel like there's plenty to keep me interested here in the cooperative variant. And if I ever get tired of playing that, I can always fall back on base viticulture for a while. So there.
What are you saying? I'm cheating?
4,
My number 4 choice is Comet. I knew I wanted to have some type of skirmish, troops on a map style game, and there are quite a few that I really enjoy. Honestly, if I was doing a top 10, you'd probably see War of the Ring on this list, because Jen and I both love that game and how thematic it is. But I wanted to have a game of this type that could accommodate more players, and Comet is one of my favorites. Comet is an aggressive game by design. You have your city, but you can't turtle within it. You have to move out, take over locations, get into fights, because that's the only way to score points. And the way fighting works in this game is really cool. In every battle, players are going to discard one of their battle cards and choose another battle card to play in the fight. They can also play a Divine Intervention card, but they can also bluff about having played one as well. The effects from these cards will get added to your troops and monsters in the fight, and if the attacker wins, they gain a point. I also love all of the power tiles that you gain over the course of the game. Everyone starts out pretty similar, but as you gain these power tiles, you get more abilities, more strength, and more monsters that can let you do some really cool things. There's a lot more to it than what I've described, but this would be a super long video if I talked about everything about Comet. So yes, if I have to choose just one of this genre of games, Comet has to make the list.
3,
For my number 3 game, I knew that I did want to have a good 2-player game, and the first one that jumped to my mind was Jaipur. This is a game that Jen and I have played a ton over the years. We still have the old green box GameWorks copy, and honestly, this is a 2-player game that I just don't see myself getting tired of playing. This is a fairly easy to understand hand management set collection game where you are trying to collect sets of different types of goods cards to sell, but selling larger sets can earn you a bonus. The tension comes in trying to gather up a larger set while having a pretty restrictive 7-card hand limit. So the way to get around that is by gathering up camel cards. These camel cards are laid out on the table in front of you and can't be sold, but also don't count towards your hand limit. But they can be traded for goods in the market row, which can be super helpful. This is the type of game that we will often set up and end up playing multiple times in a row. We've got a lot of 2-player games that we really like, but since I'm making myself choose just one, Jaipur is one I think I could play pretty frequently without getting tired of it.
2,
The number 2 game on this list was actually my most difficult decision. Even more difficult than my number 1, which was actually pretty easy. If you've watched this channel, you know that the medium to medium heavyweight Euro is my sweet spot. Brass Birmingham is my number 1 game of all time, and I love Castles of Burgundy, enough to have backed the deluxe Awakened Realms edition. So I knew that when it came to choosing only one of my favorite Euros in this range that I was going to have a tough time deciding, but in the end, I decided to go with Granha. And here's the reason. Granha just combines so many of my favorite mechanisms into one fantastic game. I love dice drafting, I love multi-use cards, I love building up an efficient engine, I love gaining unique player powers. And while I love the 2 games that I mentioned earlier, I don't feel like Brass or Castles of Burgundy give the diversity in mechanisms that I'd want if I'm forced to limit my collection. This game just got a beautiful new edition as well from Board & Dice, who I think did a bang-up job. But to be fair, the old version was definitely looking a bit old at this point. I also feel like this game doesn't get the love that it deserves. I really feel like this game deserves to be in the BGG Top 100. So for those of you who haven't played it yet, Granha is a game where players manage their farms by playing multi-use cards, which can be used as fields for crops, farm improvements to increase income or hand size, as farm workers who provide special powers, or as market barrows, which can be filled and sent to the central market board to play a small area control minigame. You'll also be drafting dice to help you with the different aspects of your farm. Each player will draft 2 dice, and there will be 1 die left over that all players get to use. It sounds like there are a lot of things going on in this game, and I suppose there kind of is, but the whole thing plays so smoothly. Like I said, it was a very tough call, but at the end of the day, I think I would be very upset to leave this one behind.
1.
And finally, the number 1 game that I would save in an apocalyptic, house is burning, ship is sinking, aliens are invading situation would be Glen Moore. Specifically, my original German edition of Glen Moore. This is a game that's been in my top 10 ever since I first played it, and even though I love Glen Moore 2 Chronicles and will almost always choose to play that over the original, my original German edition has loads more sentimental value. I learned about Glen Moore after it was long out of print in the US, and well before there was any talk of doing a new edition. But I could tell, based on everything that I had watched and read about it, that it was going to be a game that I would love. So Jen tracked down a German copy and had it shipped over, and she surprised me with it for Christmas. Now, obviously, that meant a lot to me. And even though I own games that are probably harder to find or more valuable, this is the game that I would be pretty devastated to lose. And on top of that, it's a great game to boot. Glen Moore is a tile laying game where players will draft their tiles from a time track, like you would see in games like Tokaido, where the player last in line gets to act first. But unlike other games that use this mechanism, you can't just go wild with the tiles, because at the end of the game, you'll actually compare the number of tiles in your estate, and each player loses points for each tile they have more than the player who has the least. It also has a really great way of triggering tiles to produce goods, and a fluctuating market where you can buy and sell goods to get what you need. There's definitely a reason why this one's been in my top 10 for so long. So that, coupled with its sentimental value, is why the first game I would grab if I had to save anything from my game collection would be Glen Moore. So there you have it, my 6 games that I'd save. This was a really cool exercise, and I actually had a lot of fun coming up with this list. Now I want you to tell me, what 6 games are you grabbing if you've got a bug out? Let me know in the comments below. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button while you're here, and check out our merch shop over on Redbubble. Any purchases made there will go directly towards helping the channel. In fact, thanks to some really generous viewers on both Redbubble and Ko-fi, links to both in the show notes, I'll be attending both Origins and Gen Con in 2024, and I was also able to upgrade to some wireless mics that I think will work much better for vlogging during convention season this year. So, a massive thank you to you amazing people. And until next time, let's get another round for the table.